Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Temple Institute Parsha class. My name is Gedalia Meyer. I'm podcasting from Ma'ale Adumim in Israel. Nobody likes to hear bad news. We all, for obvious reasons, have an almost irrational longing that things should go well and right for us. It is a desire that has probably been with human beings forever. It has found a home in the minds of people in every religion, in every culture, pretty much every nation. In songs, in movies, in poems, in books, we find this hope everywhere. It should come as no surprise that we find this exact sentiment in the Bible. From the famous line in the Psalms, "Only good and kindness shall pursue me all the days of my life," to the dramatic, "They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore." This is the essence of the biblical dream. It may not be all that realistic, but it sure makes life more livable. Sometimes it seems like it's the only way to make it through the day. We just don't want to hear the bad stuff. This week's Parsha is called Ki Tavo. That little phrase means when you come. A direct contrast to last week's Parsha, which was called Ki Teitzei, which means when you go. This Parsha is the transition in the book of Deuteronomy from the middle section with its long lists of commandments to the final phase of the book, which is prophetic observations about the spiritual condition and destiny of the Israelites. The rest of the book is both optimistic and somewhat disturbing. It cycles back and forth between the good and the bad, between blessing and curse. Nowhere is this back and forth more noticeable than in the long section that occupies the bulk of this parsha. This is known in Jewish circles as the, quote, long tochacha, or long rebuke, in contrast to the relatively shorter rebuke found towards the end of the book of Leviticus. Both rebukes have the same structure: a shorter section that promises blessings if the Torah is followed, and a massive section concerning the reverse. These sections are read in many synagogues in a low tone and fairly rapidly, in an attempt to possibly mitigate their impact. Whether this is wise or necessary has long been a debate in rabbinic circles. The custom remains because of the innate longing to not want to hear bad news. Even when the Bible spells it out in bold words, people really don't want to hear it. The rebuke in our Parsha begins with classic biblical promises of good if they follow the ways of God. Quote, "You will be blessed in the city and the field. Your children, your fruit, your animals, and your comings and goings will all be blessed. You shall not fear from enemies, and all nations will realize that you are associated with God's name. God will open up the heavens with rain in the proper time and bless everything that you do." What more could we ask for? But then the tone abruptly switches. For the next 54 verses, it is nothing but bad news. One verse after another relates the terrible things that will happen if they veer from the ways of God. It starts off just the reverse of the structure of the blessings. You will be cursed in the city and the field, in your children and your fruit, and when you come and when you go. But after this somewhat general introduction, it gets into the gory details. There are all manner of strange diseases, including fever, paralysis, consumption, Egyptian boils, tumors, and insanity. As if this weren't enough, the rain will turn to dust, the crops will wither, the animals will vanish, and locusts will eat whatever remains in the fields. Enemies shall come upon you from all sides with swords and destruction, exile and captivity. You will be scattered among the nations from one end of the earth to the other. You will be confronted with every imaginable psychological problem, from panic to depression to confusion to hopelessness. You will be reduced in number drastically and left in such a decrepit state that you will be powerless to do anything to rectify the situation. You will be so desperate that you will eat your own children. The list goes on in a seemingly sadistic series of predictions. It is so long that it strikes those who really try to listen to it and to understand it as a form of spiritual torture. Just when we think that it is finally coming to an end, We are confronted with another round of apparently worse punishments. What could possibly be worse than a mother eating her own children? But right after hearing that unimaginable fate, another series begins with more plagues and exiles and subjugation. How could things get any worse? It happens that the final few verses of this rebuke, which serve as a kind of encore to the whole series, are a little bit underwhelming. Here's the quote: "Your life will hang in suspense. Day and night you will be so terrified that you will not believe you are alive. In morning you will say, if only it were evening. And in evening you will say, if only it were morning. From the fear in your heart that you will experience and the sights that your eyes will see." The very final verse states, quote, "God will bring you back to Egypt in ships in the way that I said you would never again see. And you will sell yourselves there to your enemies as slaves and maids, but no one will buy." Well, by no means does this sound all that great. It pales in comparison to eating your own children. Why would the Torah close off this dramatic rebuke, filled with the most unimaginable curses, with this relatively mild outcome? What is so terrible about trying to sell yourselves as slaves and not finding any buyers? Granted, having one's life hanging in suspense is not a promising state of being, but it is nowhere near as bad as knowing that everything is in ruins. Even that business about wishing it were evening in the morning and morning in the evening really doesn't sound all that bad. Is it really any worse than the way a lot of us feel at downtimes in our lives? This odd conclusion really needs to be explained. Could this mean that at the very end, things might get a little better than they were in the middle when they reached a kind of crescendo? While this is possible, it doesn't seem like it tells the entire story. Somehow these final curses have to be a fitting capstone to all that came before. Somehow they have to represent the ultimate sense of where things have to go when the going gets really bad. Perhaps what is intended here is a kind of psychological barrage, which in its own way parallels all that preceded. What could follow starvation, exile, captivity, disease, insanity? What can compare to a mother being so hungry and desperate that she would eat her own children? Well, there may be something that meets that standard, even though it requires a little stretch of the mind to fathom it. Perhaps what is intended here is a kind of psychological barrage, which in its own way parallels all that preceded. What could follow starvation, exile, captivity, disease, insanity? What could compare to a mother being so hungry and desperate that she would eat her own children? Well, there may be something that meets that standard, even though it requires a stretch of the mind to fathom it. Perhaps the ultimate curse is not in any way physical. As bad as those physical curses were, they can be dealt with. These too shall pass. But a psychological curse, one that strikes within the very core of the source of hope in the mind, is simply too much. To know what is coming, as bad as it may be, is in some way not really worse than not knowing what is coming. To realize that one is doomed to hopelessness is, in a certain sense, a fate worse than death. What could compare to being driven to eat one's offspring in desperate hunger? As difficult as it may sound, it could be to wish that the present circumstances, whatever they are, be perpetually replaced by something else. To wish for morning when it is evening, to wish for tomorrow because anything is better than today, is to live in a state of dread of reality. If a person has been so driven by circumstances and experience, to want to be anywhere but where they are is about as bad as it gets. This is hopelessness on steroids. No light at the end of the tunnel. There is a very famous painting that perhaps expresses this sense of dread. It is called The Scream, painted by the Norwegian artist Edvard Munch in 1893. The painting is simple. It shows a person walking on a bridge over a river with a couple of other people in the background. But the person in the foreground is screaming with round eyes and mouth and hands enveloping the face. The artist described the feeling which inspired him as, quote, "I sensed a scream passing through nature." The haunting image evokes powerful emotions in those who view it. It is hard to look at this painting and not feel a sense of dread. The scream awakens in a person who has no hope. But the Torah does not end on this haunting note. There is that final verse about being taken to Egypt and not being able to be sold as slaves. What is this all about? Perhaps this is genuinely anticlimactic. Despite all the horror and hopelessness of the past, we still go on. We survive. We may not find our circumstances all that great, but we are still alive. We may find ourselves going down roads we never thought we would travel again, but there we are. We may not be wanted, even if we sell ourselves as slaves, but we persevere. This is the final message of this long rebuke. After all is said and done, after the exiles, the disease, the wars, and the Holocaust, life goes on. This may sound impossible, but it is true. Life doesn't turn into a paradise overnight. This is not the image the Torah wishes to present. That would be a fairy tale, which the Torah most certainly is not. Things will get better, but only marginally at first. There will still be problems in life and situations to work through, but there may be some silver linings in the clouds if we are willing to look for them. When things look so down that they couldn't get any worse, by a subtle form of miracle, they start looking up. Trying unsuccessfully to sell oneself as a slave is a sign that things may be on the mend. The light at the end of the tunnel may come in unexpected forms. It is no accident that this parsha is read close to Rosh Hashanah. It is meant to scare us, and it should. But it is also meant to let us know that no matter how bad things get, they do get better. If this message has to be told in the ironic manner of that final verse of the rebuke, then so be it. When hopelessness rides rampant in the mind, perhaps the only remedy is not that things will become wonderful, but that some glimmer of hope lies in the distance. To be able to see hope when none is apparent is the epitome of a blessing in disguise. May we all share in some way in this hidden blessing. Shabbat Shalom.